I'm going to explain how to adjust the valves on a CF150T, also known as a CF moto scooter. So you got to get this cover off here that goes over the battery, and there's this rubber mat in here too that you got to take out. You got these two bolts here, the valve cover, 12mm socket, loosen them up. Them on the side somewhere. Let's give the cover a couple taps. Yeah, it's gonna spill some oil, so we're gonna need to put something underneath, get some cardboard. So we'll put some cardboard underneath. Kind of wiggle and then put some cardboard underneath and then open up the cover a little bit. Some of the oil is gonna come out. You're gonna want to get the oil out first. Drips out. Then you can take the valve cover off. I'm gonna grab it with a towel because it's still hot. There's a gasket in there. Gasket looks good, so we're gonna reuse the gasket. Okay, there's the valves. All we gotta do is we have to turn the engine so that way the camshaft isn't pressing on any of the valves. Problem I noticed on this engine is that there's no way to get to turn the engine like on a regular scooter that's not fuel injected, has a carburetor, because fuel injection is not what everybody says it is. It's actually very frustrating to work with fuel injected, especially on these bikes. So basically the only way you can turn the motor would be to give it a tiny little bit crank by pushing the start button. That's all you can do. Checking in here, and both of the rocker arms are loose, and I'm looking inside. Well, looks like we got lucky here where it stopped, because the camshaft is not pressing on either of the valves right now. So now we can get in here to adjust them. And well, first we're gonna see how bad they are out of adjustment. They forgot to include in the manual what the valve clearances should be. So I'm gonna have to go on the default that I know, which is 0.02 on the intake and 0.03 on the exhaust. This nut on the top, you need a 9mm socket, and then the little square bolt on the top, you need a pair of pliers to hold that as you adjust it. Get your 9mm socket on there. Just turn it a little bit, loosen it up. Just doing that, you should be able to get the feeler gauge in there now if you couldn't before. Okay, I got it in there. It's actually about where I want it, right there. got lucky. Sometimes when you unscrew it, you can get it kind of where you want it the first time, but sometimes it takes like 50 tries to get it right. As far as I know, there's no way to turn the engine on this bike, because you're supposed to do that after you adjust the valves to double check the adjustment. So if anybody knows the way to turn the engine as you're adjusting the valves on this type of engine, then please leave a comment. That would help me out a lot. What I try to do now is, since I don't have a little wrench to put on the nut, so that way I can get a pair of pliers on the top bolt, the square bolt, I loosen it up a little bit, and then I'll tighten it back up again. I'll tighten up the nut again, and then put the feeler gauge in there and see if it's where I want it. Okay, it looks like we're still good, so then I'll go ahead and snug it up all the way, not too tight. Usually once you snug it up, that's when it gets out of alignment again, and then you have to unscrew it again. It's like we got very lucky with this one though. We're good. You can go ahead and double check it again, make sure it's snug. Okay. Then we'll do the exhaust valve next. 0.03. Actually, first I'll check it to see what it's at before I waste my time. Okay, the exhaust valve is a little bit loose, so this little bolt needs to be tightened up a little bit. The trick here is I unscrew the nut, put my fingernails around the square bolt and turn it in a little bit, or loosen it depending on if it's loose or tight. Then I snug back up, then I hold the little bolt with my finger and snug up the nut. Now I'll come back and check it again. It needs to go a little more tighter. Turn it just a tiny bit, because that bolt will turn a little bit as you tighten the nut. Sorry, I don't think you can see that. If I can do it like this. Put the feeler gauge in between the bolt, top of the valve, move it. There's not enough tension there, so it's not close enough yet to the right adjustment. So I gotta loosen up the nut, turn the bolt again, tighten up the nut, try again. You don't want to get it too close to the right thing, because when you tighten up the nut, you'll end up having it too tight, and then you won't be able to get the feeler gauge inside. Okay, that feels pretty good. Now I'm going to snug it up. And try it one more time. Okay. That feels pretty good. Got your slight tension there. You don't want it to hang up too much. See, you can move it back and forth. Well, you can't see it. I keep forgetting at this angle. So let me go over here again so you guys can see it. See? Just like that. Feels pretty good. Remember, don't snug them too much because it's aluminum. It'll strip. Actually, I think these rocker arms are cast aluminum, so they'll actually just break right off if you tighten them too much. Put too much torque on them. They'll just snap. Then you'll be doing a whole new job. You don't want to have to do that. Okay, so that's it. I don't want to, well, you'd have to put the valve cover back on before you turn the engine, because any turning of the engine by pushing the start button is going to throw a bunch of oil on the floor. this little notch part here, you line that up with the other side of the engine, and you'll see where this goes. I don't know why it's not going on. There might be a small gap there too because I took the gasket out because it wasn't going in right. So we're just gonna give the engine a little crank, tiny little crank, and hopefully we'll be able to get it to line up again to where we can actually check these. And make sure you do it with the kill switch off, so that way the engine won't start. Just like that. The exhaust valve is not touching, so we can check that again. Okay. It actually feels better now. There's a little more tension now. It's good. Exhaust valve is good. Intake valve is too tight though. Intake valve's too tight, so assuming the cam's still pushing on a little bit. Try to get a tiny little more of a tug. Okay, now as you can see, I can get it in there. Feels pretty good. And that's it. Valves are done. And what I hate about this bike is it's really hard to start it. You gotta prime it 4 or 5 times, which you shouldn't have to. So hopefully adjusting these valves will fix that problem with it starting up. There's a little like a notch thing in it that goes inside the notch in the valve cover. You just line it up like this. Tricky part seems to be getting this darn thing back on there. With a long flathead screwdriver. I don't even know how I'm going to get it in here. Let's see. The gasket keeps coming off, so I'm trying to do this as well, which makes it even harder. I'm working a screwdriver into the side cover. Looks like the only way to do this, be careful not to scratch the aluminum. Okay. Let's see inside the cover there. You can see what the scratch marks where it was at. That's where it's supposed to go, in there. So we'll put the cover on again, carefully. Line it up on that side, and then now this side I'll push the thing in. I think I got it now. have to hold it though, it's spring loaded. You don't want it to pop out. So then start putting the bolts back in. Now we're going to tighten up the 2 bolts. I'll go ahead and prime it 3 times anyways. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.